Hi, good evening, and thanks for joining us. My name is Sylvia Marcos, and I am a founding member of Salybia Mission Project. I'm a Ross University School of Medicine graduate from 2006, and I was asked to do a Facebook Live to give you a bit of an understanding of what we're doing in terms of our Hurricane Maria relief mission, as well as share some of my experiences and what I saw and heard about when I was down in Dominica in February on a medical relief mission with some of the original founders, and hopefully take some of your questions. Unfortunately, this was supposed to be an interview with two people. However, due to technical difficulties, we couldn't get the second person on. So I'll be flying solo tonight. I will beg your patience, considering this is my first Facebook Live event ever, and I'm a little bit of a novice at this. So I will do my level best to make this a good 1 hour that we spent together. So for those of you who don't know much about Salybia Mission, Salybia Mission Project is an organization. It's a non-profit organization, government recognized in the country of Dominica, where it is now founded. In 2002, some friends and I established this in response to a need that we saw. A bunch of students went up on a Saturday afternoon to meet one of our small group learning professors in a clinic in the Kalinago territory, which is on the eastern side of the island of Dominica. And it's the home of the last remaining indigenous population of the Caribbean, the Kalinago people. And when we were there, we saw and learned about some great people, some great history, some great experiences, had some great learning experiences as well, but saw the lack of resources that this community had in terms of medical care. So the group resolved to see if they can help supply some medical supplies and equipment to this clinic, and from there Salybia Mission Project was born. Since then, as I said, it's a nationally recognized nonprofit organization in Dominica. It continues to be a school club, and it is celebrating its 16th year. So hundreds, if not thousands, of students have gone through Salybia Mission Project through Ross, and for that we're very grateful. You've grown the organization, you've changed its face, but maintained its essence. And I myself have been very thankful for that, and I know I can speak on behalf of the founders and say thank you for all of those hard work and all of that effort that has been put in. As you all know, in September of last year, Hurricane Maria made landfall in Dominica. It was a Category 5 hurricane. It completely decimated the island, and then it moved up north and made it as far as Puerto Rico, and decimating everything in its wake. But because it made landfall in Dominica, that island was virtually destroyed. That September, actually, I was on vacation in Europe, and my friends started calling me up and saying, hey, listen, what can we do to help Dominica? And most of them were the founders of Salybia Mission Project. So we resolved to create a way to raise some funds and go down and help as best we can. So in February of this year, myself, Dr. Keith Ney, an ER physician, and Dr. Kevin Price, also an ER physician, spent 2 weeks in Dominica, got our Dominican licenses, spent a few days at Princess Margaret Hospital down in Roseau, and spent the rest of the time out in the Kalinago territory at the Salybia clinic that we helped rebuild. And I'm happy to report that despite the destruction that you see across the territory and across the island, the clinic did stand on that hilltop like a beacon of hope and still intact. There were a couple windows missing, one of the doors had been blown out, but overall the clinic was still standing, and a lot of the equipment had been preserved. So that made us very happy to see. They were using a generator for electricity at that time, but overall they were still able to provide care, which was very heartening to us, and should be heartening to all of you who have contributed to that effort as well. So I've written down a few questions that people have asked me, sort of the most popular top 10. I'm going to be reviewing my notes, and I'll see if I can get through those. I would encourage you to type in your questions, and a good friend of mine, Evie Cuervo, behind the lens, will be reading them to me, and I'll do my best to answer them to the best of my ability. Okay? All right, let's begin. Let's consult the questions here. can you describe a little bit about what I saw in Dominica while I was there? Dominica, as you all know, is a very lush country. There's always a lot of green, a lot of foliage, given the amount of rain that happens there. It reminded me of winter in North America, where the trees were barren. There were no leaves. There was no fruit. A lot of the palm trees had been broken over. They looked like matchsticks broken over across the across the field as far as the eye could see in some places. The roads, when we were there, it was about 6 months after the hurricane, so a lot of them had temporary bridges put in by a lot of the on-the-ground relief efforts internationally, the Canadians, the Americans, the Dutch, the English, and others who went down to help. Houses were either completely destroyed by mudslides, roofs had been blown off, and tarps were covering those. But as you know, it rains daily in Dominica, and the winds are pretty strong, so those tarps weren't doing much by way of protecting the homes, but it was something. It was quite disheartening to see. Even Princess Margaret Hospital had taken a huge hit. In terms of what we saw, that was the initial shock of the images that we saw. However, it was very heartening to see that Dominicans themselves are very resilient people, and they resolved to build and create, and roofs had started going on homes, and you started to see a few ground vegetables being sold at the market. The only fruit I had there was watermelons because the trees were barren. There were no bananas, there were no mangoes, but they were able to produce watermelons 6 months later. So that was heartening. So you see the country starting to reflourish, starting to rebuild slowly, but that was the glimmer of hope that we saw as we were there. So next question. Tell us about your initiative now. Well, we went down in February, and while we were there, the three physicians managed to fill our suitcases with just medical supplies, from bandages to topical antibiotics to everything in between, and whatever we could basically carry on our backs and our luggage down to Dominica to help the Kalinago. What the founders did was start a GoFundMe account. We came up with about $14,000 US, and from there we've been spending and for those supplies. While we were down there, we stocked the Salybia clinic, we stocked a Maho River clinic, and we also provided some supplies and equipment to the Castle Bruce clinic, which is the level 3 clinic in the district, all of which are servicing the Kalinago people, although the Salybia clinic is the only one in the territory proper. We still have some money left in the account, and we wanted to continue to help support the community. So being an executive board member of Salybia Mission as well, we've coordinated both the executive board, the founders, and the students themselves, and collectively we are working on getting a 20-foot shipping container of supplies and equipment, both humanitarian and medical, to Dominica, leaving port in Miami on June 8th of this year. And so from there, we have everything from hammers and saws to bandages to wound care supplies to flashlights to anything sort of in between, to bedding and pillows, diapers, baby formula. So we're expanding our base not only from medical supplies but to humanitarian supplies as well. Different fundraising efforts have happened. I know that the students have been really good about raising funds as well, and the executive board had some money in their accounts that they want to devote to this effort. And Ross University has stepped up, and they've said that they will help facilitate the shipment of the supplies from Miami to the Ross University campus, help us clear the items through port in Dominica, and then from Ross University distribute them out to the Kalinago territory. The goal is to have the Kalinago Council decide who gets what and how much. I think that they're the best placed folks to determine the needs of their community and help fill those needs. We won't be allotting that directly to them, but we will be giving it to the council, and they'll decide who gets what. At some point, we'll be getting some status reports as to how the community is doing and how our efforts have helped grow and build the community and what impact we've made. which begs the question, you know, how can you help? And this is part of what this Facebook Live is about. On our website, www.salybia.org, and it's spelled SALYBIA.org, on the landing page, there are Amazon wish lists. The same way your friends develop a gift registry for a birthday, a baby shower, a wedding, we've developed similar lists for the supplies that we would need to send down in the shipping container. So, you know, those of you who have an Amazon account, go on to the wish list, click on the item you wish to purchase. There's the address of the shipping container or the storage locker that we're getting everything shipped to. It'll automatically get shipped there, and we'll load it onto the tropical shipping container. If you want to spend $5, there are items there for $5. You want to spend $100, there are items there for $100. But anything that you're able to help with and support, we would greatly appreciate. There's a PayPal account on there as well that you can donate money to directly, and whatever we cannot get through donations through our Amazon wish list, we will purchase off of that list as well. We'll also be sending generators, foodstuffs as needed and as requested by the community. And like I said, hammers and nails, saws and shovels, and whatever else they have requested that would help build and rebuild the community. Now, Edie, are there any questions out there pending? Nothing pending. All right. So I'll tell you about what the executive board of Salybia Mission is doing. So as we know, in order to build, you need more than hammers and nails. You need something to hammer a nail into. You need wood. You need galvanized steel for roofing. You need all of those building materials. And it's a bit complicated for us to get those things on a shipping container and down to Dominica. So what the executive board will be doing is, our goal is, currently we're researching on how we can get an account opened at a supply chain that's actually on Dominica, like Rudolph's Hardware in Portsmouth or something along those lines. We'll open up an account and we will coordinate it with the Kalinago Council so that they can go down, pick up whatever supplies they need. If they need 10 sheets of plywood and 2 pieces of galvanized steel, that's what they would buy, to a maximum of whatever the account is. And hopefully that will also help create some, support in terms of the materials they need. If you visit our website, if you visit our Facebook page, which you have to log on here, you will see some of the pictures of that the Heath and Kevin and I took while we were in Dominica, illustrating the devastation, illustrating the harsh living conditions, and seeing what the actual need is of this community, and our hope is to try to help, just as we've done for the last 16 years.
What are is the population of Dominica, and specifically the town where you're doing this work?
So Dominica as a whole has about 70,000 people. In terms of the death toll from Maria, I tried to get those numbers, but there wasn't anything official out yet. The Kalinago people have, as the community, have on average about 3,000 people. So they're a small segment, but as I said, they're an important segment because they are the last remaining indigenous population of the Caribbean. Many Dominicans have left Dominica. Those who could afford to and could flee have left the island for other neighboring islands or family and friends in the mainland U.S. and other places around the world. But unfortunately, not everybody has the privilege to be able to do so. And those who remain need our help, and this is why we're doing this.
How important is it to get this type of support for the people of Dominica when there are crises all over the world?
There are crises all over the world, and everybody is requesting donations for other equally legitimate causes. But Dominica, being such a small Caribbean nation with such limited resources, relying heavily on their neighbors and friends for help and support, I think it would behoove at least the Ross community of students who lived in Dominica. Basically, they welcomed us into their country for the 2 years or so that we lived on the island, I think it would behoove those of us in the community and those who support us to help support them, because that island has completely been wiped out.
Have you been getting reports from the community? How is everybody doing? How is the support that's been provided? How has that affected them?
So the community, I'm in communication with the Kalinago Council once every few weeks or so, just to understand how things are going down there, what specifically they need, how can we tailor our relief efforts to best meet their needs. The schools are open. Children are going to school. The 3 clinics that I mentioned, Salybia, Maho River, and Castle Bruce, are all functioning. They are without power and electrical, and therefore they need to be powered by generators, but they are still able to provide care. Interestingly enough, when I spoke to the district medical officer, she told me that post-Maria, the Kalinago community and the district of Castle Bruce had the least number of post-Maria infections secondary to open wounds that people were getting from clearing debris or helping with the recovery efforts. Least number of infections relative to the rest of the island, because they were so well stocked in terms of supplies and antibiotics. So that bode well as well. At Princess Margaret, they've taken a huge hit as well. The hospital is quite decimated, but they are working with what they have, and they are still trying to provide care to the community as best they could. Their x-ray machines are still up and running. Their CT scanner is still up and running. Sure, things take a little longer to get to because of the fact that there's difficulties in terms of the electrical and alike. But there's definitely some bouncing back. It was nice to drive through some communities and see new red roofs on some of the homes. If you looked in the area of Picard and the area surrounding the university, Ross University, for those of you who have been on the island, there were lots of new roofs on those homes that were often student housing. So that was heartening to see. Some of the restaurants are starting to open up again. Some of the tourist attractions are starting to open up again. When I was actually staying at the Champs, where many of you have know and have spent some time with Lise and Hans, they were housing guests from Switzerland and England. So there is a trickle of tourism, a trickle of volunteerism that is returning back to the island and helping with its regrowth and regeneration. But it is slow, and it is a long and arduous process that they have ahead of them. And we're just trying to help to facilitate that a little bit.
The clinic where you have been working with your colleagues, tell me a little bit about the impact on that community.
So that the clinic is the primary place where people in that community receive their care, be it diabetes care, be it wound care, be it anything in between, be it maternal care. The nurses and the midwives there do all of the deliveries and all the prenatal care, postnatal care with the support of the district medical officer and physicians like us who go in and volunteer. But it is a vital part of the community because it maintains its vibrancy, it maintains its health, and it tries to keep people who have lost everything from losing their most valuable of resources, which is their own health. So it was heartening to see that it was still standing, that they were still able to provide some level of care, that the cabinet that we procured when we were students there, that a carpenter built, was still standing and being used and full of supplies. So that was very heartening to see.
When you and your colleagues came in shortly after the hurricane, what were people saying to you? What was their reaction to seeing you again during such a devastating time?
The Dominicans were very grateful to see us, be they the local Dominicans or the Kalinago community. I had been down since graduation to the Kalinago community before this trip to Maria. So a lot of the people in the community recognize me and were happy to see me back, and we're happy that we were able to help in some way. We were not the only people providing help there. When I was at Princess Margaret Hospital, there were physicians and nurses from all over the world. There was from Israeli aid, from New Zealand, from Canada and the US, medical specialties, surgical specialties, ER specialties. Bill Clinton actually went to the island while we were there for the Clinton Foundation, and he met with the government officials, and he helped pledge support to make the island a little more climate resilient. So different people in different ways are providing help. So I think the reaction is one of gratitude, not just for us, but for everybody who's gone down there. It's always a pleasure to be able to go back and work, especially with people who were once those that were training you in some degree. Now, as a fully licensed and fully accredited attending physician, I can go and work alongside them in a way that is different from what I was able to do as a student. Yet they're still teaching, they're still learning, so that cycle continues. And it was such a privilege to be able to go back and work with Nurse Joseph and meet some of the other nurses as well. We saw Nurse Burton there, both of which we helped support their education through our nursing scholarship, as well as through the midwife scholarship that we were able to provide. So a lot of the nurses who we paid for their education remain in the community and are still supporting the community, and it was a privilege to be able to work alongside them.
Ray, Madeline have joined us. You can say welcome.
Welcome to Madeline and
Ray.
And Ray. Thank you for joining us. And we hope that you will help support our efforts to restore Dominica by participating in our hurricane relief mission. Again, I would encourage you to go to our website, www.salybia, salybia.org. Go on our Amazon wish list, which is like a gift registry for a wedding or for a shower or another event, bar mitzvah, if you will. And you can go on and buy an item that's $5, buy an item that's $50. Any support would be great. Anything that you could be able to help fill our 20-foot shipping container that's going down to Dominica on June 8th for our hurricane relief mission would be greatly, greatly appreciated.
Tell us about the first time you went to Dominica and the impact it's had, for yourself to continue to do work in that area.
So the first time I ever landed in Dominica was as a medical student. That started me on the career which I'm so passionate about and feel so privileged about, the ability to practice internal medicine on a daily basis. While I was there, like I said, we developed Salybia Mission Project, and that became my link to the island. And even though through med school and residency, as many of you know, it's difficult to make those time commitments and those monetary commitments, we still had some involvement with Salybia Mission peripherally, and we kept in touch through John Hawley and through the executive board meetings. So I've been on the executive board since I've left the island. I went down, I believe in 2013, just before Erica, was surprised and awed by the changes that the Ross campus and the community around Ross campus had developed into from what I had remembered nearly a decade earlier. But the work of Salybia Mission continued to prevail, and students had developed it and nurtured it and grown it from an infant idea that we had when we were a child to this teenager now that was learning and growing in different ways. It was a privilege to be able to speak to some of those students and understand how they've grown it and what Salybia Mission Project means to them and what they've been able to contribute. And now again, it was a great privilege to return with my friends who I met down in Dominica, to go back and as full-fledged physicians and be able to contribute to the community that had contributed so much to us.
Tell us a little bit about sort of moving forward now. Since Hurricane Maria, tell us a little bit about the plans now. So you mentioned something's happening in June. Tell us again.
So in June, on June 8th, hopefully we will get a 20-foot shipping container full of supplies, medical and humanitarian, leaving the port of Miami through tropical shipping to Dominica. Once there, Ross University has helped graciously offered to help facilitate both the transport and the clearing through the port of Dominica, and the container will end up on the Ross campus. From there, a convoy of trucks from Ross and of the Kalinago Council and community will take the supplies from the school campus across island to the Kalinago territory, for which the council will be responsible distributing to the community as needed. And as we've done in the past when we used to do our barbecues, it's not just focused on the Kalinago. That is our primary focus, but that is not our only focus. We're of the philosophy that if we have more than we need, we should share. And in the past, when we were organizing fundraising barbecues, when I was on island, there was always food aplenty. So it wasn't just the Kalinago community that benefited from that. The local old age home would benefit from that as well. So if we have supplies that and able to fill the needs of the Kalinago community, and there are others who are equally in need or more in need, I'm sure that those who are charged with the distribution will be able to share those supplies and ensure that those who are the neediest are able to benefit from that as well.
Does the community know that the shipping container is coming sometime in the next, couple months?
Yes, the community is aware of our efforts, and we've been collaborating with them in order for them to understand, for us to understand what their needs are. We can come up with a million ideas of what we think they need, but they are the best people to guide us in that decision-making process. Our goal is to get it down at the beginning of June because the next hurricane season is just around the corner, and it is important for them to be stocked and supplied before a subsequent hurricane season comes through. Hopefully there won't be anything close to Maria, but given the decimation on the island that exists now, they are poorly equipped to handle another hurricane season, hence the sense of urgency to get this out the door and to them.
Elise has joined us.
Welcome, Elisa. Thank you for joining us.
Tell us a little bit about the work that's existing right now from people who are on the ground.
So there are different humanitarian agencies who are on the ground. USAID are down there. Individual physicians such as ourselves who went down and donated our time. Other organizations are down, like Israeli Aid is down there. UK Aid was down there as well. There are different humanitarian organizations there. There's actually a ship docked in Portsmouth that came over from New Zealand that is going to be spending 3 years in Dominica to help with providing medical care as well as dental care and public health assistance and building as well. So there's been a flurry of activity, not just from our organization. We haven't the logistical power and support that other organizations like Global Medic, who happened to be down there immediately after Hurricane Maria, used Ross University as a staging area to distribute water filtration systems across the island. We haven't that infrastructure, but there's this wave after wave after wave of humanitarian aid that is being sent to that island, and we're merely one more drop in that bucket in the hopes of being able to get that island back to its former appeal.
Kevin has joined us.
Welcome, Kevin. Thank you for joining us.
Tell us about when you were there earlier this year. Tell us about some of the work you were doing.
So when we landed in Dominica, the first few days we were there, we had to spend at Princess Margaret Hospital until we got the logistics sorted out to go out to the Kalinago territory. Heath is an ER trained physician, so he spent his days in the accident and emergency, as they call it, or the emergency room, as the rest of us call it. And I was on the internal medicine floor. So the basic work of internal medicine, you round on your patients, you design a plan of care, you follow up on labs and imaging studies if available, and you try to help nurse these people back to health. Heath tells a story of when he was down there. There was a 2-year-old little boy who had hurt himself, and he had a gash on his head that probably would require stitches in any other day in Dominica on that island. He happened to have some Dermabond, which is skin glue, went into his bag, pulled out the Dermabond, and glued the little scab shut. And something that would have taken perhaps an hour of anesthetic and coaxing and trauma perhaps to this child of stitching this thing up was easily remedied with a tube of Dermabond and 5 minutes of care. So we think that we did make a huge impact in that regard. I know for myself, I did a lot of teaching to the house staff and to the students about standards of care and simple things like congestive heart failure and pneumonia treatment and COPD, and trying to align what our practices are in North America with what they're able to practice given their limitation in supplies and resources. And so we try to tailor as best we can the care to that. When we were out in clinic, we saw patients the same way the district medical officer would see patients, and we would manage their chronic conditions. I would get the more difficult diabetes cases or the more difficult hypertension cases, wound care cases. But there was everything from prenatal care to pediatric care. Because I'm an internist and I focus primarily on the adult, those were the cases that were directed to me, the more difficult to manage, if you will. As the internal medicine specialist, I was able to provide some guidance and some assistance in that respect.
So take us back now, the reason for today's Facebook Live, and welcome Jacqueline.
Hi Jacqueline, thanks for joining us. The reason for today's Facebook Live is there was apparently a groundswell of questions that a lot of the alumni had, a lot of supporters of Salybia Mission had, a lot of Ross students had about what the island looked like post-Maria, what we can do to help. Rather than answering these questions individually, as I've been doing in the past, the Salybia Mission Project group decided that this would be perhaps the best way to capture the largest audience and be able to answer the greatest number of questions in a short period of time. Hence my very first Facebook Live event.
Tell us a little bit then, what's happening now.
So, for those of you who have just joined us, this Facebook Live event is to provide some information as to what we're doing as an organization, what Salybia Mission Project is doing, primarily our humanitarian relief effort and our shipping container that we're going to be sending out from Florida via tropical shipping on June 8th. It will be chock full of medical supplies and humanitarian aid, as well as generators and foodstuffs and anything else that has been requested from the island to help their rebuilding process post-Hurricane Maria. In order to make that happen, we're looking for your help and we're looking for your support. Please visit our website, www.salybia.org, spelled salybia.org. On there, you will find an Amazon wish list. It's the same registry as you would a wedding or a baby shower. You would go on, you can look for a $5 item, you can look for a $50 item, anything from a flashlight or a bandage to a chainsaw. And purchase an item within your budget and send that off. That will go to a storage locker that we have in Florida. We will take all of that and put it in a shipping container, and our goal is to fill a 20-foot shipping container that will go out on June 8th. And the reason why we're doing it in this tight time frame is because hurricane season, as you know, is just around the corner. And after the devastation of Maria, that island needs all the help they can get, especially those living in the Kalinago territory. And from what I saw, they will be hard-pressed to live through another hurricane season in the conditions in which they are living. So we're doing our very best to get them the supplies that they can in order so that they can be best prepared for this next hurricane season. So that's the goal of the Facebook Live. That's what we're doing, and we're hoping that you will help make that happen for us.
Tell us a little bit about what the conditions are right now again.
So the conditions on Dominica, from what I was able to experience, there is still no power through the vast majority of the island. I know that in the Kalinago territory, as of about 3 days ago, there was no power. I checked with one of the members of the Kalinago Council. They still do not know when they will be getting power out there. There was power in Roseau There was power in Portsmouth and in around the university, and there was power in the Marigot region and the region around the airport. Other than that, there was a lot of people who had generators. A lot of those people did not have generators. So in terms of an electrical supply, that was sparse, and they were working on it. Thankfully, the water supply is available. There are water purifiers provided by Global Medic and other humanitarian organizations. The amount of rainfall that happens in Dominica is able to replenish their water stores, so they do have access to clean water, which is definitely a good thing. In terms of foodstuffs, a lot of the fruits and the fruits primarily that we would associate with Dominica, the bananas, the mangoes, and all of the fruit that we were able to that was at our disposal, if you will, as we walked down the road, no longer exists. The trees have been completely decimated. There was barely any foliage on any of them. Bananas are starting to come back. Apparently bananas take 9 months to regenerate. So the bananas should be coming in soon, which would be a definite plus for that island, considering that's one of their main exports. But they were able to start developing there was some squash, there was some watermelons, things that you were able to grow on the ground. We saw some of those in market, but a lot of the sort of fresher fruits, things like tomatoes, are still being imported and not grown on the island. So in terms of food supplies, they are limited but available. A lot of the grocery stores had very sparse items on their shelves. It wasn't as stocked as one was accustomed to. And schools are back up and running, which is definitely a good thing. So students are back up and functioning in schools. The hospitals are functioning to the best of their abilities. The clinics are working to the best of their abilities as far as I know. I can only speak for the district of Castle Bruce because that is a district in which we worked. But slowly, that island is starting to restore itself.
Tell us just a little bit about an experience you had perhaps with somebody from the island who you helped and what that meant to them. Can you share a little bit?
Well, when we first started Salybia Mission Project, when I was in medical school, there was someone by the name of Finian who was a paraplegic. And we used to see him we'd visit him with the nurse, and he had the worst bed sores that I'd ever seen in my life. And through the support of being able to bring in the appropriate wound care supplies, the appropriate bedding, and the like, we were able to help with the healing of those. I'm sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water here. Thank you. And as Salybia has grown, so has the relationship with Finian. We've been able to help support him in many different ways. Recently, he was in need of a new bed, and this was post-Maria, so we are currently working out the financing and the logistics of getting him a new bed. We, provide Foley catheters because he needs to be able to drain his bladder on a regular basis because he has no control over it, considering he's a paraplegic. So this has been an ongoing relationship, a relationship that has not just been with me, but with every group of students who have gone through Salybia Mission. And I think that we've had a very positive impact on his life.
Tell us a little bit, once again, where people can go if they want to support.
If they want to support our hurricane relief mission, they can go to www.salybia.org. That is our website. On the landing page, there is a list of items on a registry. Sorry, pardon the dog. A list of items on a registry for Amazon.com. You can go on there. If you can spend $5, you can spend $50. You can buy a flashlight. You can buy a chainsaw. And you're going to help us fill that 20-foot shipping container of supplies that we're sending down, humanitarian efforts that we're sending down to the Kalinago of Dominica. If you don't want to make a purchase through Amazon, you can always deposit money in our PayPal account. We are going to use those dollars to purchase the items that are outstanding on that gift registry so that we can continue to fill that container.
It's 9:40. Tell us a little bit more about the impact of the work being done there. And hello to Elisa.
Hi, Elisa. Thank you for joining us. The impact of the work that we are doing there. Those of you who have been on Dominica know what that island is like, know what a small thing can make a huge difference. And let me give you an example. We were in Castle Bruce, and we were doing a needs assessment. What is it that you need? If you could get anything you needed, what would we be able to provide for you? And I would ask the nurses this, I would ask the support staff this, I would ask the physician this. One of the things that they needed was a new exam table. Somebody had sat down on an exam table and had broken the faux wood and cracked it in half, and therefore this exam table was no longer in use. Nobody had the supplies or the equipment to be able to fix this exam table. So thankfully, we were able to take the exam table apart, take the area that was broken. We stopped at the hardware store and paid an outlandish amount of money for a piece of plywood. Took it back to the hotel, and the concept of it takes a village. Somebody volunteered their skill saw and cut the piece of wood to fit the dimensions that we needed. Somebody else volunteered some pliers, a hammer, some staples, and we were able to reupholster, if you will, this part of the exam table, take it back, attach it to the piece that was there, and now it is a brand new exam table. And it's a huge impact on the community because now they can actually use that room for exams, but it's also an example of what the collective can do if somebody will just be a conduit for other people's generosity.
And tell us again about this container that's going in June 8th.
So this 20-foot shipping container will be leaving Florida on June 8th via tropical shipping to Dominica. Ross University has graciously agreed to help facilitate the transport of that, aid with some of the costs of that as well. They will be taking the container from port to the campus on the island, and from there a convoy of trucks of Ross University employees, as well as those of the Kalinago community, will take the supplies out to the territory and distribute them accordingly. We leave it to the Kalinago Council to do a needs assessment for their own community. They get to decide who gets what resources at what time and how much. But our goal is to get that 20-foot shipping container full of supplies, both medical and humanitarian. Anything from bandages and gauze to hammers and nails. We're looking at the full spectrum. We're sending generators, we're sending bedding, we're sending baby diapers and formula. So there's a slew of things that we're hoping to obtain in that 20-foot shipping container. And this is why we're looking to you for help on that. And you can help us help them. And in that way, you're actually helping them. So we would appreciate any support, any generosity that you would be able to share.
How critical are these items right now, considering the devastation that remains and that they're heading into another hurricane season?
Well, I think that you got the nail right on the head. Because there is a hurricane season just around the corner and they haven't been able to recover and rebuild from the last one, they are incredibly vulnerable. And for this reason, it is more important to get these things down in this time-sensitive fashion so that we can provide them with the tools that they need to be prepared for the next hurricane season and survive it. There's a paucity of supplies on the island itself. It's difficult to get building supplies and material there because things are coming in through port. There's always a time delay on that. There's a cost associated with that, and because it is such a limited supply, this is why we paid for very expensive plywood, and therefore there are many limiting factors that would keep people from being able to recover and rebuild in the way that they normally would from a regular hurricane season. Because this Category 5 hurricane completely decimated the island, it made landfall there. Nobody was spared. Even the Prime Minister of Dominica, in his interview with ABC, had his roof blown off as he was being interviewed. So, irrespective of your social class, irrespective of where you lived on the island, Hurricane Maria touched you in some way, shape, or form.
Why should people care and support?
There are hundreds of other equally worthy charities and agencies across the world doing great work in different communities. I think it's important for those of us who went to Ross, who benefited from living on that island, being part of a Ross community, being able to be practicing physicians, to be able to give back to that country that adopted us for 2 years. To me, it behooves us to be able to do that. We all have different links to that island. We all have different experiences to that island. But it's the old adage, when you have a lot, you don't build a higher fence, you build a longer table. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to share our bounty, share our good fortune with those of us who we know, who those people were part of our lives in some way, shape, or form while we lived in Dominica. So in my mind, I think it behooves us to give back to them, considering there's a previous connection and a link to that island that is different from any other link that one would have with any sort of other worthy organization.
What are some items that would really be helpful if people could only give one or two things? What would those things be? Bedding is a big deal. So
bedding, baby diapers and formula, power tools, so anything from chainsaws to get harvest all that wood and use that to build, hammers and nails. That seems to be the big ticket items. A lot of the medical supplies we were able to supply when we went down. They'll probably need to be replenished soon. So a lot of the wound care items, things like gauze and topical antifungal creams and wound care cleaning, that stuff is super important as well. So those would probably be the top items that I think would be, and personal hygiene products, things like toothbrushes and toothpaste and sanitary napkins and adult diapers and baby diapers, basic things that we take for granted, soap, things that we take for granted which are not available down there.
Angelina has joined us.
Angelina, thank you for joining us.
So tell us again about the importance of what's going to happen in June.
So June 8th is a big day for us. We will be sending a 20-foot shipping container from the Port of Miami, Tropical Shipping, to Dominica. We hope and expect that 20-foot shipping container will be filled to the brim with humanitarian supplies and medical equipment and supplies that we've been able to procure through donation efforts such as the one we're doing tonight, and the efforts that students, alumni, Ross staff, founders have all been able to contribute to and to give. Everything will be going into that container. It will be medical supplies to humanitarian aid, from personal items to building supplies. And again, our goal is to get that container filled to the brim, off to the island, and into the hands of those who need it before the next hurricane season, because of the fact that they've been completely decimated by Maria, and they are very ill-equipped to go into another hurricane season in the state that they're in now.
It's 9:50. A few more words as we start to wrap up.
Sure, we're wrapping up. We haven't gotten any questions, so I'll just do a quick summary of who I am and why we're here. My name is Sylvia Marcos. For those of you who are joining late, I am a Ross grad, 2006, practicing in internal medicine in Toronto, Canada. I was a founding member of Salybia Mission Project, and have continued to be an executive board member on the board since that time. After Hurricane Maria, as many of you know, that Category 5 hurricane made landfall in Dominica, completely decimated the island, worked its way up north, and got as far north as Puerto Rico. And Dominica is still reeling from that. The founders, hearing about this, resolved to do something about it, and we put together a fundraising effort, and 3 of us went down in February, myself, Dr. Heath Ney, and Dr. Kevin Price, both emergency physicians. I'm an internal medicine physician. We went down and we were able to work alongside the physicians and the nurses and the other care staff there to help with the relief efforts. We spent a few days in Princess Margaret Hospital, and we spent some time in the territory as well, working at clinics at Castle Bruce, Maho River, and Salybia. I can tell you the drive from Portsmouth to the territory is still as difficult as it was for those of you who have made that trek, but even more difficult now because the road conditions are so poor. The lush green that you're used to seeing on the side of the road as you walk through has been substituted by trees that are as barren as they would be in a winter country. The palm trees look like matchsticks snapped in half. The housing, some of the roofs have been replaced. Many of them still have tarps labeled US Aid or UK Aid from the original humanitarian efforts. Most parts of the island still don't have power, including the Kalinagua territory. A lot of people are using generators. Those who have them, the clinics are being powered by generators as well. And it's a very different Dominica than the one that we all remember and we all experienced while we were there. And the lack of supplies, the lack of ability to rebuild because they haven't the resources to do so is clearly evident. The desire is still there. Dominicans are very resilient, and the hope and expectation that they will be able to rebuild their communities is there, and we're just trying to help expedite that and help support that by providing them the tools that they need in order to make that happen. So we're looking for you to support. So please visit our website, www.salybia.org. Go on to our Amazon wish list. Please select one of the items. Again, if you can buy anything from a flashlight to a hammer, to a power saw, to baby diapers, to bedding. On that, there'll be an option to send it to our storage locker in Florida. From there, it'll be put on this 20-foot shipping container that will sail June 8th and go to Dominica. Ross University has graciously agreed to pay for some of the shipping and to help facilitate that to the island, so we are very grateful for that. And the onus is now upon us to see if we can fill that 20-foot shipping container. So we're reaching out to current Ross students, family, friends of those, alumni, and all our supporters to help make this happen. I think that's time, so thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, please post them after this. Once again, please visit our website, www.salybia.org, and we look forward to receiving your help and being able to share your generosity with those at Dominica. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you. Good night.